Okay, I'm going to try to get out from behind the podium. Hi everybody, it's great to be with you. My name is Robert Opp. I'm the Director of Innovation for the United Nations World Food Program. And I'll tell you a little bit about the way we're approaching blockchain at the moment and where we want to go in the future. So actually, I think this presentation started on the last slide. There we go. Okay, great. So, in the World Food Program, we start with the problem we're trying to solve. And the problem that we're trying to solve is the fact that 1 in 9 people are still, in 2018, affected by hunger, not receiving adequate quality or quantity of nutrition. And I think you can probably guess some of the main causes of hunger, but some of those include, for example, natural disasters, which quite frankly, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent these days because of climate change, so that's a major driver. You also have a driver related to war and conflict, which pushes people from their homes, creates vulnerability among populations, and there are 65 million people displaced right now, which is the highest level since World War II, and that trend is actually increasing, not decreasing. And then you have the grinding, desperate poverty that people experience that really prevents them from giving themselves or their children adequate nutrition. And this picture shows a group of children from Guatemala that are standing underneath the international benchmark for age for height. You can see how short they are. And they are stunted. This is not genetic. They are stunted because they have not received enough nutrition in their young lives to reach their maximum physical potential, and what's even worse is they will not reach their maximum mental potential either. So hunger costs millions, trillions of dollars in lost productivity each year. And actually the world has committed to ending hunger by 2030. It's one of the Sustainable Development Goals, where every member state of the UN has said we will end hunger by 2030. There's some good news, which is that over the last 25 years, we've made progress against hunger. So on the aggregate, we've gone down from 1 billion people in 1990 to 795 million in 2015. The bad news is that the last 2 years, we actually saw a reversal of that trend. So obviously, if we keep going the way we're going, we are not going to make it to ending hunger by 2030. So this is the problem, one of humanity's greatest enduring challenges. Now, the World Food Program, just to give you a 20-second introduction, it's the United Nations agency charged with providing food assistance. And each year across around 80 countries, we provide food assistance for between 80 to 100 million people. And we do that with physical food commodity deliveries, and that's quite a large physical supply chain. So we move 3.5 million tons of food a year. At any given time, we have 5,000 trucks on the road and ships on the high seas, and we run a small airline to do that. And increasingly, we're giving assistance in the form not just of food, but of cash. And that makes sense when you consider that there are more parts of the world where there's functioning food markets. We give people cash so they can participate in that. And when we look at the role of innovation, it is in mind to address the problems that we are trying to solve within our agency and for the broader anti-hunger effort. And so we're busy looking at things like artificial intelligence, blockchain, agricultural technologies, mobile connectedness and things, all with this in mind. And it's with that spirit that I'll tell you about how we're experimenting with blockchain. So I mentioned before that we're giving increasingly not just food assistance to people, physical food, we're giving actually cash assistance as well. And last year, we gave $1.4 billion worth of cash assistance to people. That number is going to rise to probably $2 billion this year. And that is both in the form of what we can call conditional cash transfers, so like vouchers. You know, you can give a voucher for somebody to go to a retail store and draw down on a credit, basically, to buy food for what they need. Sometimes we also give cash in the form of just going to an ATM or another cash point, pulling it out, and then people can buy what they want. But this is important because cash distributions face certain challenges. And especially in the places where we work, which is all of the rather undesirable places of the world, some of those challenges include high costs, the cost around delivering cash. You need intermediaries to provide you services to do that. There's also a risk in doing that. Every time you transfer funds that we've received from government donors or other donors of the world, you transfer it to a third party, there's a risk. There's a privacy issue because if you're giving people cash entitlements, you need to know some form of information about their identity. You need to share that with intermediaries. And of course, there's accountability of aid flows, how we are stewarding public resources. And so one of the things that we decided to look at looking at that cash, those challenges related to cash, is how could we use blockchain to address some of those challenges. So what we've done is created a platform called Building Blocks. It's based on the Ethereum protocol, and at the moment it's a private Ethereum chain. I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll tell you a little bit about how the program works, how it worked previously, and how it works now. So in Jordan, where we are assisting 500,000 refugees, Syrian refugees from the conflict in Syria. 100,000 of those are living in camps, and they are registered by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and this program is already pretty high-tech. They're actually registered biometrically with iris scan technology. That was already in place, so that's not the innovation. But what this program does is this is a digital voucher program for refugees. With their iris scan, they can go to any one of a number of retail points, supermarkets, around the camps in Jordan, and they can draw down on their monthly entitlement just with a scan of their iris. That is the program already in place. So, what happens right now is the World Food Program receives money from donors, and it receives identity-related information from the High Commissioner for Refugees. And we need to provide that information to a third-party financial service provider. And that financial service provider creates wallets for people, each refugee who's entitled. We create wallets for them. The financial service provider also traces the transactions and the payment flows, does the reconciliations, and makes sure that the retailers are paid what they're owed for the vouchers that are used. So that's the current process. But with the blockchain system that we've used, we actually eliminate the role, in this case, of the financial service provider. So we have the funds and we have the identity information, but we use that now on our own blockchain to register and create virtual wallets for people ourselves on the blockchain. Then we use the blockchain to trace the payments as well. We use the blockchain to reconcile because we have a perfect data trail. And then we transfer funds directly to retailers in batch transfers or bulk payments so that we reduce the amount of transfers that need to be done, and it's really quite economical. So this program, what we're seeing so far is an increase in transparency. We have more information about transfers to people than we ever had before. We feel it's more secure because we're not sharing identity information and funds to third parties. We feel it's more confidential because of that as well. And actually, we're also saving, I would say, a significant amount of resources doing this because the financial service provider was charging us a 1.5% fee on every single transaction to be able to do the functions that are now being done by the blockchain. And so we're saving in this program, with 100,000 refugees involved right now, we're saving $40,000 a month. We've used this system so far to transfer $14 million of benefits to people. It started as a very early proof of concept in January of last year. By mid-year last year, we were at 10,000 refugees to establish the proof of concept. We scaled that at the beginning of this year to 100,000, as I mentioned. By the end of this year, we hope actually to scale beyond that and move to probably 500,000 people in Jordan, so the whole number of refugees that we assist in Jordan. And now we're also facing some very interesting scaling issues. So what we have to do going forward with this system is we need to integrate it with corporate systems. So we run, for example, an SAP-based ERP system. So how do these systems connect to each other? It's a big issue. We're also looking at, beyond the iris scan technology we use with this, what are the kinds of other technology we can use for for transfers? So mobile phone, mobile money, card-based systems that we use in different other parts of the world. So how can we expand this to those other modalities? And then we'll also scale this system up to other countries that we've got to be able to test in different contexts. How can it work? Can we provide a continuity of service? Will we get the same benefits? How is it going to work in different contexts? So we need to establish that to really be sure that what we're doing is the right thing. But I also want to mention very critically, what we're doing now, using a private Ethereum blockchain to do what I've just mentioned, improve our financial flows, can actually be done by a database. And we're starting to see people who are coming and saying, well, you know, you guys aren't doing anything new. You could do this with a database. Why the hell are you using blockchain? Well, my answer to that is, if we thought this was the end state of blockchain in the World Food Program, we would use a database. It probably makes more sense. It's probably cheaper. It's better established. But this is not the end point for us. This is the beginning point. Because the other thing that we want to do with this system is start to expand it, both inside the organization to other use cases, as well as offer it as a collaborative and neutral platform with other agencies that are involved in humanitarian response. We're already working with the United Nations Women Program, and they will join this system. We'll work collaboratively on this, and we are also talking to several others right now about joining forces to make this work. And in terms of WFP, one of the other areas that we are exploring is supply chain. So I mentioned the physical supply chain, moving 3.5 million tons of food each year. We're starting to look at our Djibouti to Ethiopia corridor, which is one of the main corridors in the world, and whether we can use blockchain to increase the efficiency and transparency, the accountability of those physical supply chain flows. We're also looking at how this fits into the identity ecosystem. And there's lots of people talking about identity here. World Food Program is not an identity issuer, but de facto we have people's information about people's identities, and we need to have a broader ecosystem that looking at digital identity and how that's going to be managed for the benefit of people themselves. And then there's a ton of other use cases, many of which are being discussed today. For example, land registry for small farmers who are working with very insecure land titles. These things will all help with the broader anti-hunger ecosystem. And I would just say, as a final note, to reinforce this idea that we really see this as a beginning of where we're going, that we really need to kind of figure out how, as a humanitarian system in particular, we're going to create a neutral way of collaborating so that we see this developing over time and we can really reap the benefits of data sharing, of having unique individuals that are being served by different agencies. We can have that all in one place. This is a growing platform that we have a real opportunity to build together. So with that, I don't know if we have time for questions. Oh, okay, yeah, why not? I don't see anyone here telling me to shut up yet. Who said shut up? It's okay, it's fine.
Hi, thank you so much for your speech. My name is Ash. I'm at the Blockchain Trust Accelerator at New America. So I have my question's in two parts. My first question is, so databases have been in existence for what seems like forever. Why did the World Food Program choose to go with the banking institutions, the financial, like the third party, instead of using database if it was possible? Like, what was the benefit that you got from using these third parties? And the second question is, do your recipients have access to these virtual wallets that you create through the blockchain? How do they access their money? Do they know how much they have left? And are they able to see it anywhere? Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So, to answer your second question first, actually, so nothing has changed for beneficiaries themselves, the refugees themselves, between the old system and the new system. So their user experience is identical. So we're really just dealing with a back-end change. They didn't really have access to their wallets before. They don't have access to their wallets now. So one big question we have is, what is the future of financial inclusion for this system? Because how do we actually start getting refugees with bank accounts? And in some countries, many countries, they're actually not allowed to have bank accounts either. So it's an open question for us that we realize that we need to figure out a better way to have financial inclusion in the system. On your second question, this is actually more of a, I think more of a kind of an internal scaling issue. So to give you an idea, 5 years ago, we were delivering about $180 million of cash value as compared to 1.4 billion last year. So we haven't really been working we've been using financial service providers because they've been the ones that we can go to at a country level and plug in and get things set up quickly. So if we had not been experimenting with blockchain now, we would be experimenting with databases to do the same thing. So it's just, I think, a kind of a life cycle of our program type of issue. Any other questions? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jay. I work with the IRC. You mentioned you're implementing, or you have rather, an SAP ERP system. We're just out of the design phase of a large ERP of our own. What would you say are some of the things you're running into with, I understand, a fairly long-standing ERP system that you're working with?
I would say there's a couple different answers to that question, and at a sheer technical level, I'm not going to have a good answer for you. But what I see happening is that it's kind of like any new system that you bring on board. So the blockchain-based system that we're using, it wouldn't be any different than any other database that we would bring. But the big issue that I see is that there's a strong need to get all the business process flows aligned. So it's like we kind of gave parts of the organization a heart attack by trying to put this in and then say, okay, now we have to make it work with SAP, because it's like, well, wow, we weren't anticipating having to do that. And now we have to kind of redo our business flows. So this is the issue about scaling, right? So it's, we did this proof of concept in kind of a safe space environment by running sort of parallel and redundant systems, you know. But now it's prime time. Now we have to get into the heart of the roots of the organization's infrastructure, and that is causing us challenges. I mean, it's going well, I have to say. It's causing challenges, and one of the things that has happened is we've actually asked our internal auditor to come in and look at the whole system, including the business processes, to help us sort out whether we've done this in the right way or not. Because I don't want anyone turning around and saying to me, you know, you guys have just jeopardized the organization's financial integrity by introducing a untested technology. So this is, but so far, everything we've done is holding up to scrutiny. And so including that SAP integration link, which is a lot about just getting your automated workflows happening properly.
Yes, hi, I'm Daisy. I work at the Inter-American Development Bank. I wanted to know how many retailers are your tail end in terms of numbers, and also the transaction cost on the blockchain in terms of all these payments. Who's bearing that cost? Is that something within the program, or is it something through the retailers?
Yeah, so this program, because it's based in the refugees that are living in camps in Jordan, has a limited number of retailers. I think it's 3 to 5 supermarkets, something like that. I mean, globally, we work with thousands and thousands of retailers, but what we've done is plug into the system that was already there for the digital voucher program we had. And these are large supermarkets that are set up around, but we also work with small retailers elsewhere in the world. So this one is fairly limited because they all have the same point of sale equipment that has the iris scan technology that they had previous, and that has nothing to do with the blockchain. So that was plugged in. I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
The transaction cost.
Oh, yes.
To register on the blockchain. Who's taking up that
Yes.
cost?
So right now we are, and this is still scaling. So we've had to augment the staffing capacity in our country office a little bit by one person to be able to kind of make this work, but a lot of it is still done manually until we get our automatic integrations working. So the transaction costs, once the automatic integrations are there, are going to be virtually zero. The development costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000. And so far, it's the World Food Program bearing the cost of that. We'll also bear the cost of maintenance until we can get some other kind of arrangement, whether we go to a consortium or some sort of other arrangement. We'll keep doing the maintenance for now.
Hi, thank you again for the presentation. My name is Moises Randon. I work in CSIS, a think tank in Washington, focusing on the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. Two brief questions. One, what were your main policy challenges to implement building blocks in other countries? I know it's a pilot program in Jordan, but I'm just thinking, how likely is this to be implemented in other crises like in Venezuela and Colombia, where they're receiving a lot of refugees as well? I know WFP has some presence there. And that's the other second question. Are you guys trying to implement that initiative in countries like in Venezuela, Colombia? Just curious. Thanks.
Yes. So I mean, our pathway to scale will definitely be to pilot this elsewhere, because the way our cash programs have evolved, there are different types of programs. I mentioned there's some that are like ATM-based. People pull cash out of ATMs. There's other types of digital vouchers. People receive cash on cards. They receive cash by a mobile phone. So we need to test it elsewhere. I can't say that Colombia or Venezuela are on the list for that just yet. We're likely more to go to a couple countries in sub-Saharan Africa because we've got slightly larger programs and we want to test those out. But you know, policy-wise, you know, it's less of a policy issue for us and more of a practicality type issue. We've got to keep our eye on cost-benefit for this. So we need to be able to understand well enough how to quantify the benefits that we're getting out of this in order to make that calculation that this is worth implementing elsewhere. And that's going to be the real key to scale. And this was also a finding of the review that we did with our auditors, which is how to better calculate the total return on investment that we're getting, both in terms of not just financial savings, but it's all the other benefits that are quite significant that we need to be able to quantify. And that's sort of like that's a practical policy issue. We have to convince our country directors and our leadership in the organization that this is worth pursuing in a broader scale. But I believe we are on a good path to do that. I think my time is almost up, but I'm happy to take questions until someone boots me off the stage.
Hi, my name is Shamak. I'm from MasterCard Corporate. Quick question on digital identity. If you could just elaborate on the future of where you're heading with digital ID. And also here what I see is that you remove the link to the financial institutions, so you're owning, in a way, a lot more information about people's ID-related engagements that over time may constitute their identity profile, which in turn we hope people use to become bankable, but we just removed some of that link that you had before. So there's some trade-offs, right?
Yeah, great question. So as I said before, and as you've kind of nicely summarized, the issue is that the World Food Program does not aspire to be an issuer of identity. National governments have that responsibility. The High Commissioner for Refugees has that responsibility. But in a de facto sense, the information and data that we're gathering about people is starting to constitute identity. So we're looking to work as part of a broader ecosystem to sort out how to manage these things. And so if you've got, for example, unique individuals that are being assisted by multiple agencies, what we're saying is that it would be a great benefit for a lot of humanitarian organizations to have that all in one place, which is kind of connected to your identity as sort of a kind of an economic history or a sort of a history that is being put in place, that it would be very useful to understand more about the impact of our programs when you're being served by all sorts of different organizations. And then ultimately, of course, you get into this issue of how are you stewarding that data, because at the moment, we're owning private keys and all that kind of stuff. How to responsibly do that, which needs some policy development work, and we've got data protection policies and privacy policies and things like that for the people that we serve. But ultimately, how do we move in that progression to user-centric data management or self-sovereign data management, which I would like to see happen, but we're not the only actor in that. So we're working with others to figure out what that has to look like in order to make that a reality. It's extremely important, but we're realistic. We're just not going to make it work on our own. No.
Hi, my name is Justin. I run a tech startup for live streaming content. One of the questions I had for you was that 2 questions ago you were talking about quantifying that data to figure out how much real social impact that you guys are doing. Do you have any way of real-time visualization of that data that we could show globally that, like the different demographics of the different countries, of the different people that you're affecting? Is there real-time processing of that data or visualization of that data?
The very short answer is not yet. We'd like to get there, but we don't have that yet. We have some visualization of the live transactions as they happen. Like I could flip onto a system and show you live transactions happening in Jordan as refugees buy things from the grocery stores right now. But it's not converted yet into that kind of benefits type visualization. Not yet. No. I don't know who's running the show here. Yeah, can you just come up and tell me to leave, or? Okay, thank you. Oh, you're Sophie.
Yeah.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, it was really nice to.